Hello everybody, it's Connor and we are back here with another One Leeds video. It's a little bit of a strange one this for me. I'm actually on a bit of a hiatus. I've come away, I don't know if you can tell there, but I am in Staithes, a lovely place near Whitby, here for the night, which is great, but come away for a little bit of a chill out session, and I definitely would recommend that to anybody who sometimes, the world can get a little bit hefty sometimes, a little bit heavy. So it's always good to have your own mental timeout if you can do that, whatever it is that you feel is necessary for that. So, quick shout out to Staithes, probably closer to Middlesbrough than anywhere else. But there you go. It's I've seen a lot of Leeds hats round already, but there you go. Anyway, enough waffling. What are we here to discuss? Well, I don't know if it's going to be shown on the thumbnail, obviously, because I'm away. I don't have my laptop and everything here to do a sort of thumbnail or any graphics or anything like that. But I just wanted to talk about something that I've been thinking about for quite a while now, and it's Marcelo Bielsa and a potential succession plan with regards to him staying at Leeds or moving on in the summer, and what I think. And so it's an interesting one, isn't it, with regards to Bielsa and what we think is going to happen. And by the way, I know this is a really touchy topic with a lot of Leeds United fans, because if you question anything, you are sort of a hater, you are negative, you are pessimistic. But listen, I just want the best for my football club. That is who I support. That is who I will support until I die. So yeah, I think it's definitely important to talk about this. I've been asked to talk about it as well. So let's get into it. The reason this is sort of prevalent at the minute is because three names have been suggested by the Telegraph, Mike McGrath, of three successors for Marcelo Bielsa if he chooses to move on, if Leeds United choose to move him on. We've got Jesse Marsch, formerly of RB Salzburg. The link we'll come on to in a little bit. Valverde, obviously ex-Barcelona, and very intertwined with the Bielsa style of play. And Carlos Corberán, obviously ex-Leeds United staff, Marcelo Bielsa's one of his right hand men back in the Championship days, now applying his trade at Huddersfield. So, what do I think overall? Well, I know a lot of you have asked me this question, Connor. Do you want Bielsa out? I think it's a really harsh way of going about it, saying that, because what I never liked with Arsenal fans is sort of the hounding out of Arsene Wenger, a true great at Arsenal, someone who's brought them so much success, more relative success in terms of trophies and stuff like that than obviously Marcelo has brought Leeds. Relative, I will use that word. So I hated that, and the problem with Arsene Wenger was it got to a point where he was extremely stubborn. It became very, very stale, and the ideas weren't working. Now I think stale is another sort of harsh word at the minute. So I'll modify that word and I'll just say not stale but predictable. Arsenal became very, very predictable. Transfer windows became predictable. So it's on and off the pitch. Wenger became the head of the club. And that's ultimately what Marcelo Bielsa is at the minute. He is head of the club. He is head of Leeds United. Everything goes through him. There is, in my opinion, a lot of credence to the fact, or to not the fact, but to the thought process of Victor Orta and Andrea Radrizzani wanting to do more in the summer, wanting to do more in the winter window as well. I do think there's a lot to that. And we saw sort of snippets of that in the Amazon documentary as well, where there was sometimes it could be a little bit fractious between manager level, recruitment level, and owner level in terms of ideas. So I think you've got to pick it apart really in terms of how Leeds are going to go forward. Now, as I've just said at the start, do I want Marcelo to leave? Absolutely not. I think ideally what needs to happen at Leeds United is there needs to be a change of philosophy and ethos in terms of, not on the pitch in terms of playing style, although I do think that needs to be modified, but off the pitch as well. The recruitment, it has to be said for me, has been poor, very, very poor for two transfer windows now. I still think in the summer we got it completely wrong. It was obvious that Leeds needed a central midfielder. For me, it was still obvious we needed to replace Leif Davis as well. And was Klaassen ever going to be fully ready to step up to that second place goalkeeper? it's all hypothetical in terms of Clarkson, because it looks at the minute from what I've seen that he's nowhere near ready. So you'd have expected the board to identify that, and I think there was more that Leeds could have done. I do still think another striker should have been brought in, but that's besides the point. It's all with hindsight now. I know a lot of you will be screaming that at your laptops, your TVs, your phones, whatever, and I completely understand that. But for Marcelo to stay on, for me, there has to be, I said a modification before, the better word is probably compromise between the board, the owner, and him. Now, it's all also dependent on what happens off the field in terms of the ownership. San Francisco 49ers take full control in the summer, which is a big likelihood right now. What will happen there? Well, there's a lot of people who are very, very excited about the 49ers. I am as well, but I am still sceptical. I think American owners naturally do try market their ventures abroad, I will say, or foreign market into the US, and I think that's going to be definitely a commercial plan for the 49ers when they come in. You know, you look at Stan Kroenke at Arsenal, that's exactly what they've done there. You look at American owners when it comes to the Glazers, Henry at Liverpool as well. They market and they funnel that club into America. That's their main aim, because they know that's where the money is, and then it goes globally, doesn't it, from America. So I think there's a lot to consider here, because when the 49ers are coming in, what do they want? You know, are they going to want a certain person in who's going to be marketable to a US audience? I think that's definitely something to consider. I think you look at the player that we're going for, there's a lot of people who make links towards Brendan Aronson and that poster boy, that US poster boy. I think there's a lot of credibility to those links as well. But when you fundamentally look at Marcelo Bielsa, is he going to be part of the long-term future at Ellen Road? And that is definitely something to consider, because Radrizzani, in my opinion, won't be the full vested owner going into next season. That's my personal opinion. So then it's completely new. It's complete new ideas. It's a complete new ownership, really, and it'll be interesting to see if they stick to what's been going on. But I think the long-term plan for Radrizzani and for the San Francisco 49ers will be Europe. I think you'll see more American influence at Aston Villa. I think you'll see, American influence at Liverpool, and I think a lot of the 49ers, being the successful brand franchise that they are, will want a piece of that pie. So how do you get to that? Can you get to that with a small squad? Can you get to that with a real rigid idea of playing, which rarely changes? Can you get to that with the same personnel being given chance after chance after chance after chance, and with certain personnel, those certain individuals are not helping the manager, but his faith is still so ridiculous towards these players, which is a credit to the man for what type of man he is. But when you're looking at a business and a football model, that's where Bielsa is up for criticism, because there's a lot of talk about, we'll use him as an example, Tyler Roberts. But there's one man who's picking him, and there's one man who's picking him in front of Joe Gelhardt. There's one man who's picking him in front of other names, a Lewis Bate, whoever you want to talk on. So I think ultimately there has to be a compromise in the summer. Now, the long-term vision for me is that I think Leeds will move on from Marcelo in the summer. I've got a real inkling with that. And I would be very, very sad to see him go. Very, very sad. And this, once again, for one, isn't me saying Marcelo's going to leave, this, that and the other. But I think when you take a step back and look at the long-term vision of the club, which is what I try to do, and maybe that's why it comes across as a little bit pessimistic sometimes, a little bit negative, because I don't look at it game by game. I try to take a step back and see what's going on and where my club is going and what the noises are coming out of the club, and if they align with what's happening right now. If the vision is playing out, if you will, the project. So Leeds stay in the division for this year, touch wood. And then you look at next year, I think there has to be drastic improvement. And I think, even if Radrizzani is still about, I don't think another relegation battle, no matter how sentimental you are with Bielsa, will fit with the new ownership. I don't think the injured player rhetoric suits with the new ownership, because the new ownership will be wanting to push to a top 10, top 8 finish in years to come. And there is an average now of 4 injuries per game over a 4-year period with Marcelo Bielsa. Could be a link there. I would suggest that there is a little bit of a link there with potentially training and all this sort of stuff, and the demands put on the players. I would say there is a little bit of a link there, but there's also been freak accidents as well in training, which we have to acknowledge. But I think all these thoughts will come into the owners' processes. If you get injured, we need backup. If you don't want backup, we'll get more injuries without any squad depth, and there is then no literal sense of us climbing up the table. It will be a continuous battle at the bottom of the league, because we will have to implement some of our young players, the young players which stick around. We have to be truthful about this, don't we? I know they've been given debuts, but debuts and minutes are two completely separate things. So it's definitely something to consider with Bielsa. It's definitely something to look at. And that's where I talk about compromise. This guy's done so much for me. I started my channel with Bielsa. I started really falling back in love with the club again because of Bielsa. I've always been a staunch Leeds fan. I was there in the dark times. So anybody who questions my support because of my opinion is I always find it quite amusing, because I think there's a lot of Leeds fans who have sort of come out the woodwork now. I wonder if those Leeds fans were there in the dark times, which I certainly was. But listen, that's by the by, isn't it? I think it's going to be a huge summer for Leeds United, and if a new guy does come in, I think I do think it will be exciting, and nobody said that from what I've seen so far, and that's not me for one saying that I want Marcelo out at all. I just question whether or not he will change. We've seen it with the lineups with Click and Rodrigo. We've seen it with the staunch backing of Tyler Roberts, over 100 games for Leeds United now. We've seen it with the lack of minutes for the youngsters. We've seen it with loan players that have gone out and then will not feature for Leeds again. There are certain principles that Marcelo sticks by, which is amicable. It's beautiful to see. He's such a wonderful man. But is that indicative of him not changing in the summer? All I hear from people who want to keep Marcelo into next season is if he's given if he has an injury-free season, which he's never had, ever, at Leeds United. It's been 4 years, 4 injuries on average per game. We've never had a fully fit squad. Or it's, in the transfer window, we will go and spend big and bring in loads of players. And it just doesn't, and I think a lot of these people are sort of holding on to that because they know it's not like the empire is falling, but we are seeing more and more cracks, aren't we? We're seeing more and more cracks with it now. And I think when you are looking long term, short term, everyone's going to say, everyone's saying we're staying up and all this sort of stuff, but that's not where you look. You look to next season and what will be happening next season. Are we going to be in the same position again with the Premier League evolving like it is, which is quite terrifying, the Premier League, how much it evolves year on year on year due to the money spent and new owners and new ideas. So I think a fully strength squad would be something that would be beneficial. Of course it would. Would we be in an improved state? I definitely think we would be. But you do look at the first 6 games, and with Patrick Bamford, for example, it still wasn't great. Many games with Calvin Phillips in, it still wasn't great. And I understand we'd be in a better position. Of course we would. But I'm not 100% sure how much better we would be. And I think it's a bit of a safety net for people to think that if Calvin and Patrick Bamford would be in this side, we'd be top 10. I don't think we would. I think there's been too many moving parts. I think there's been too many favourites put in positions which they're not used to playing. And I almost think a lot of the game management has been quite poor. So I guess when you look at that and you look at the market and you look at the window, it would need a huge change from Marcelo in terms of, and this is not just blaming him, of course it's not, but I do have the belief that Victor Orta and Andrea Radrizzani are more than willing to bolster the squad. But if they did that, you are going over his head, and we know what happens when you go over his head. Lazio, Espanyol, whatever you want to call it, you just don't do it with Marcelo at the helm. Jesse Marsh, Valverde, Corberan. I look at Corberan, not for me. Valverde, I get it. He's a Bielsaist, isn't he? Valverde. But I do quite like the look of Jesse Marsh. I do like Jesse Marsh. I like what he did at Salzburg. Philadelphia Union is where he brought Brendan Aronson over from. But wouldn't it be interesting, and it does follow a very logical trio for and this is when I come back to globalization and marketing, especially to a US audience. If you are to get new American owners in, they bring in a new poster boy in Brendan Aronson, and then they bring in a new coach who's worked with Brendan Aronson before and follows the Bielsa methods, high press, possession-based football, risks, lots and lots of risks is what you're going to get with Jesse Marsh, and entertainment and youth. He's a very young manager. But if you are an American business and you see that as the way of getting into the American market, which notoriously it will, you'll go to any part of the States. If you're out there now, if you're living out there now, if you travel over there, you'll see Leeds tops with Aronson on the back, maybe some sort of sponsorship, an American sponsorship, who knows, on the top. And I think that follows a very logistical standpoint. So that's what I think will happen. Ultimately, the conclusion around this is, what do I think would happen? What do I want to happen, sorry? I want Marcelo to adapt. But if Marcelo doesn't adapt, I would welcome a change. And as I've said numerous times in this video, he has made me, he has ignited a fire in me for Leeds. So I've seen some beautiful football under this man. Beautiful football. But I think if you're looking at a 20-man squad, which he will, you're looking at the same players for another year, another 2 years, and you're looking at the same patterns, the same players being in certain positions, I think it's just going to hinder Leeds. I think it's going to really hamper the club, and I'm going to get a lot of sort of abuse for this. But I feel like I've tried to put it across in a really sort of democratic way. The guy's a wonderful man, and he's done everything. And my hope is that he stays and he adapts. And I think that's fair, because I think the Bielsa right now, with these sort of ideas in terms of what happens off the pitch as well as on the pitch, but mostly off the pitch, because I think recruitment is huge. I think that's going to hurt him further on down the line. And conclusively, I do not want this man's reputation to be tarnished. And if it is tarnished, if it does get nasty next season, if we are still seeing drip feeding into the first team and still the same patterns happening, potentially youngsters moving on, I think it would be a horrible shame for him to go out in that sort of way. That's what I'm going to say about it, guys. Adaptation, I think, is needed. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. It's been something I've wanted to do for a while, and hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully you've not taken a negative out of it, I hope. And I think with my subscribers, you're all amazing. Genuinely, the comments are all intelligent. They flourish, and I hope I've cleared it up a little bit. I really do, because I do read all of your comments. And I hope this has sort of given you sort of a bit of my perspective after being asked about it a lot. But, the Jesse Marsh appointment would excite me, but I'm also very sceptical of the American ownership. I am, just naturally, I guess. And my ideal scenario would be Bielsa to stay and for him to adapt. But I just don't think that will happen. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, guys. We're going to have your Man United preview coming out massive, very, very soon. It'll be out tomorrow. The reason I wanted to make this is because It's been on the news today, hasn't it? The 3 potential successors. Let me know what you think. I'll see you in a bit.